we're back. My name is Harry Tambuatco. With us, we have Attorney Alan Pagia. The issue is dynasty, and now it's gotten worse. It's called nepotism. And to bring you abreast to what's going on, if you're just tuning in right now, we're talking about the actual issue. Lawmakers, dynasties, beware. You are now not only violating, I didn't realize na yung violation nyo, dapat pala, nagkamali na kayo, you don't have to even legislate. We got you. Attorney, let's go straight to that. On the nepotism, my question before we took a break, need a person like myself or any Filipino citizen need to make a complaint para matanggal itong mga dinastiya, para tumigil? Or
Nepotism or dynasty?
First, dynasty.
Right.
On dynasty first, before we go nepotism. On dynasty, we have to make a complaint. Why can't the law go after lawbreakers as it sees fit? Nakikita naman nila, why does it need a complainant?
They can. But they don't. The ombudsman requires so many copies of a complaint under oath before it takes action.
Yeah, why is that?
While under the Constitution, even if you write your complaint or even if you just call in your complaint, they're duty-bound to investigate. Even if you write it on a toilet paper, they're duty-bound to investigate. But they don't.
Isn't that a clear violation of their position in government, the trust given into them in that position?
Exactly.
So I will get a piece of toilet paper and write my complaint and send it to the ombudsman.
Huwag naman toilet paper.
No, but
Coupon ban naman.
no, but should I, and not being a man of the law, I can do this and I'm well within my rights as a citizen.
And they should act because that's their duty under the Constitution to investigate any act or omission which appears improper, which has the taint of impropriety.
Which is obvious in this case, dynasty.
Yeah,
but
course.
it's still, so, an ombudsman needs a complainant.
Not really, because it can act motu proprio
So,
on its own.
the ombudsman obviously knows the dynasty issue is a big deal. It's all over media. It's all, in print. All the editors are writing about it. On TV and radio, walang tigil eh. Everybody's criticizing it left and right, especially more so now since the UNA and the Liberal Party came up with their dynasty listing. Di ba tama? It's so obvious. Why isn't the ombudsman? So, can we now go after the ombudsman for not doing her job? It's so obvious.
Yes.
Does it need a complainant? Not necessary.
There has to be a complainant.
There has to be. So she cannot do anything until there's first a
You can
complaint.
impeach her for inaction, for not doing her ministerial duty of conducting an investigation when there is a complaint before the office.
Oh my gosh.
But it's just like, the president violates Section 12 by accepting the resignation of Ombudsman Gutierrez, who has a pending impeachment case for graft and corruption. That is illegal, but nobody seems to see it.
You mentioned that before. Hindi dapat, you should not have accepted it. Dapat wait out the impeachment until
The law
matapos.
says they should not be allowed to retire. They should not be allowed to resign. Aside from that, the Senate had already acquired jurisdiction for impeachment for graft and corruption.
And she got out of it because
And
she
he
just
violated it. The president violated it. And people see no evil, hear no evil.
Hindi kaya yung mga abogado niloloko ang taong bayan sa mga ganito. Isyong ganito.
That is very painful truth.
So it is true. My statement, my very painful statement is true. Naloloko kami ng mga abogado.
Yes.
Because there is a lack of nationalism and nation building among the lawyers.
No. Not nationalism. Plain and simple lack of common sense. Because you see, you cannot also blame the other lawyers. There is no book on political law in the Philippines, on the Constitution, that is saying what we are saying here. But what we're saying here are fundaments in first-year law school, and which you can appreciate even without being a law student. And that is the reason why I think the problem is a little more activation of our collective common sense. You know the definition of policy?
Okay.
It's a manifestation of collective common sense.
That's policy.
That is policy. The statement in Section 26, Article 2 is policy.
Policy.
That is a common sense of the Filipino people.
Parang nagkukulang tayo ng ganon.
Yes.
Nepotism. Does it need a complainant?
Yes.
It needs a complainant.
Yes.
So the people, we the people, the citizens who no longer like dynasties, who want to get out with the rule of these oligarchs, can actually, by ourselves, go to the ombudsman and
Civil
go
Service
the,
Commission.
And the Civil Service Commission. Si ano yan? Si Dr.
Duque.
Duque.
They have the primary duty to investigate reported cases of nepotism, even if unreported, because it is their duty to implement the civil service law. Nepotism is one of the prohibitions under the Administrative Code of 1987 on the chapter on Civil Service Commission.
You know what's coming to my mind, Attorney Allen, as we speak, is are we still under rule of law in the Philippines? Because it seems to me that there is a lacking competence among those who have studied law who should be doing this on behalf of the people. Because this should have been questioned. These families and feudal lords should have been disqualified, if not taken out of office. Those in violation of nepotism should not have been allowed, be it in the many administrations that have come and gone. Diba? Are we still under rule of law, or is the Constitution no longer but a piece of paper that people step on?
No, it's not the rule of law anymore, because when the chief executive, the chief law enforcer, is caught, is demonstrably violating Section 12 of the Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act, and he is not held accountable, and nobody seems to see anything wrong with that, then don't expect rule of law, because the chief enforcer cannot be expected to enforce the law in complete good faith. Perhaps in view of political partisanship, yes, but not for the love of the rule of law.
So yung nangyari, that what has come and gone with the impeachment, that is also incorrect. Hindi na complete yung cycle. Incomplete, basta tinigil na lang and let it go.
Yes. And there is no explanation. The problem is there were 24 senators, and these senators cannot claim ignorance of the law, because it is conclusive presumption that everybody knows the law, especially the legislators.
They're tasked to do this.
And if they ignore the law, then that is a tragedy of the highest caliber for the sovereign people.
Attorney Allen, many of them are going for re-election.
And
Do you realize
they
this?
might even win.
Yeah, no, but they're not only in violation, they're accountable to the law. They just went through this process just recently. So here we go. So they have been found wanting, kinulang na sila ng husto, nagkamali na, at ngayon tumatakbo ulit, baka manalo pa. When to begin with, they should be made accountable for their last act, and their many acts.
That is another argument against dynasties, which is anti-democratic. Instead of the power of legislation being exercised by a cross-section of society divided into districts, divided into regions, it becomes these regions are grouped together because political power is monopolized by a few families.
Yes.
So that anti-democratic, that antithesis of democracy will cause a lot of problems, because instead of legislators trying to be statesmen, they will be legislators who will try to compromise with each other.
Which is what is happening today.
Which is what the framework of agreement is, compromise.
Which is illegal under the very Constitution and the law that they swear to abide with.
It is, in fact, an oxymoron. You know, when you say agreement, there is a meeting of the minds. But when you say framework, you don't have a picture. You only have the frame, but no work inside. The work is limited to the frame.
Yes.
So it is oxymoron, because you actually see nothing. in the framework of agreement that they refer to. But the title itself is clear. You know, oxymoron. What is inside will still have to be decided by the legislature. Why? Because there is no law yet that will be implemented by the executive, which entered into a framework of agreement. You have the frame, but no picture.
Do you teach this in school?
No more.
To our
The
new
first
lawyers?
semester has passed already. We have finished our final
You mean
exam.
this is just the first semester of law? What we just talked about, this is so fundamental and so basic? This is so basic, and yet we are already...
So basic.
We complete this
So basic, a non-law student like you with a lot of common sense can appreciate it.
What irritates me is how we let it go to get to where it is today. So I guess I would be irresponsible if I do not formally make my complaint to the Supreme Court, no less, if not to the Civil Service Commissioner, Dr. Duque, and file this complaint. I mean, have them go after it and argue.
Force them to rule.
Force them to rule.
Force them to rule that there is a public policy established under the Constitution which, if violated, would render the act void from the beginning following the provisions of the Civil Code.
Pag nangyari yan, lahat ng mga dynasty, tanggal sabay-sabay.
That's why there are two possible things. You will lose in that case, or number two, they will dribble it so that it will become moot and academic because of the long delay in acting on it.
Which we go back to when you go to court in this country. My biggest complaint to you ever since was it only takes decades.
Now, let me say something about that, please. It is not so much the delay that is the root of injustice. Delay is okay. But what is not okay is the uncertainty of accountability. Convicted ka na, nakakawala ka pa sa maximum prison. Convicted ka na, nakikidnap ka pa.
Executive side na yan, management na yan.
No, but that is the legal system. That is our system. That is our government. And nobody is held accountable for it. So who's accountable for it? Oh, here comes a whistleblower, Bong Makilala. He says, oh, may racket dyan sa Bureau of Prisons. They conduct a panel of investigators. I understand there is a 96-page findings. It has not seen the light of day. And they're quiet. So where is that going? What does that tell the people?
The people are not, we are not being held accountable to the rule of law, or the judiciary themselves are delaying the resolution and not addressing, ayaw magbigay ng resolution.
But it's not only them. It's also the executive branch, like the Department of Justice. They were the ones who ordered the investigation.
And they're keeping quiet.
They're the ones in charge of the Bureau of Prisons.
Yes, they're the ones in charge.
Who is liable now? The people have not been told.
This is also, can you call that corruption?
Obviously, because if you don't do your legal duty within the reasonable time, there is
That's a corrupt
there
practice,
is partisanship. Right? Yes.
For whatever reason, I mean, you may not be able to prove it, but
that fall under Section 3E of RA 3019.
How come they don't
anti-graft law?
Ba't hindi nahuhuli, Attorney Alan?
Because there is not enough competent and lawyers with integrity in those offices which should be doing it.
But what happens to Citizen Joe, Citizen Juan de la Cruz, seeing this happen? Wala na ba tayong redress?
The attitude of our citizens are like this. They choose candidates, and then they support during the campaign. After the candidate wins or loses, bahala ka na.
No, in this specific case, like this case that you're citing with the penal, with the prisons, kawawa naman ng taong bayan. Ganun na nangyayari. Inuupuan ng korte ang desisyon. They made investigations. You have 96 pages. The judges
Hindi lumalabas.
Yes. Ayaw gawa ng resolution. Kawawa naman si Juan de la Cruz. what happens to him in a system that is corrupted by the judiciary or the executive branch and whatever, you know?
And that is not all. You remember the US extradition treaty of 1994?
Yes, extradition.
They have been implementing that with respect to Congressman Mark Jimenez,
Yes,
Michael
yes.
Ray Aquino,
Wala
Glenn
naman.
Dumlao. But, you know, under Article 20 of the same treaty, it is provided that it shall be effective or enter into force upon the exchange of the instruments of ratification
Which was never
which
done.
are not there.
Uh,
It's as simple as that.
non-existent.
The problem is, the RTC will not go against the Court of Appeals. And the Court of Appeals will not go against the implied recognition by the Supreme Court of the validity of the treaty, which
when there
it
is
has.
none.
Yes, it never entered into force. But it was not raised by the lawyers of Mark Jimenez. It was not raised by the lawyers of Michael Ray Aquino. And now we are raising it.
Mm-mm.
And now
Where is that going?
it's in the RTC of Manila, it's in the Court of Appeals. It will go to the Supreme Court eventually, but the problem is we will be stepping on big toes. Why? Because the Supreme Court have already impliedly recognized the validity of the treaty, although
Walang
it is
treaty.
very clear no exchange of ratification happened.
Yeah, it was not signed by the U.S. Congress.
Yes. And
That's
that
clear.
is a requirement under their constitution
Yes, they have to.
and under our,
Our
constitution,
constitution.
and under the treaty itself.
Attorney, in a situation like this, where the judiciary is left wanting again, anong redress ni Juan de la Cruz? Paano naman kami? Paano naman yung taong bayan? Nakikita natin, kinukulang ang mga Court of Appeals, Regional Trial Court, ang Ombudsman, the different executive agencies attached to the executive, di ba, that are supposed to provide service. Paano naman us? Because if the Filipino has no redress, how can we even expect foreigners to come in to have any sense of stability towards a government that does not work?
Let us get back our collective common sense. Hindi pwedeng individual common sense lang eh. Let us watch, let us still watch TV, but let us watch the more intelligent talk shows. Let us watch less of variety entertainment.
Educate ourselves.
Let us listen more to intelligent discussion on radio, and then let us read more intelligent articles on in the newspapers.
So, in this case, the redress, what you're saying, is the redress of the Filipino, is we have to bind together collectively and then go to the courts and tell them, hey, hindi pwedeng ginagawa nyo. That's not a revolution. Now, mind you, this is just redress. This is not necessarily a rally with placards and fists in the air. No. This is with civility going there. Hey, you have to make a resolution on this. Hindi pwedeng hindi.
Let me put it in constitutional terms. What you're saying is the proper redress of going to court is exercising your right and duty as a particle of sovereignty
And it's my right.
to hold into account the certain public officers whose authority in governance are derived from our
From us,
sovereignty. Yes.
So it's our right.
Yes, because sovereignty resides in the people and all government authority emanate from them.
And yet, baliktad na nangyayari. We are being subjugated and being fooled, run around the block by the very entities that are supposed
I'll tell you why.
because we're stupid.
No. Because 70% of our society are monopolized by dynasties, per your study. Because the dynasties will,
So we're back in the
will
circle.
naturally preserve themselves.
Yes, there's self-preservation, which is what they're doing now. And they're winning. They are in all crevices, all crooks, all little holes in government. Be it the executive, the legislative, even the judiciary. Nandiyan dyan lahat sila.
That's why we have to teach law again. We have to reach out to the first-year law students and present to them that kind of spirit which will put life into our Constitution, put life into our law, and then put the law into our lives instead of us being dragged along by untamed practice following the law of force.
Alan, Attorney Alan, when the people, or like myself, is born or put in situations that already has a cancer, so to speak, the system that we have today, what do you think people like me should do? Or people who wish to change the dynasty, the judges who refuse to give proper resolutions or order resolutions, they just delay. People who don't want to go after those that are clearly violating the Constitution and the law, what should we do? I mean, I don't want to go up to the hills. I think that's passé. That's
3 words.
done. Study law. That's only 2.
Keep on punching. Keep on punching. Because in the end, our faith is that good will prevail over evil.
That's beginning to sound religious.
No, but what is religious is at the core of our faith in government. Because before we follow our faith in God, we have to have faith in our own society, in our own laws. That's why we have human laws as distinguished from divine laws. But human laws, we cannot even be faithful to it. What more?
Divine law.
Yes. You know, they say, you know, this priest in Masbate, Father Cases, is running for governor. They're saying that's wrong because he will exercise political power. But the Secretary of Education is a Lasalite brother, religious also. So that's another oxymoron.
I always thought that was odd, to tell you the truth. See, Armin Luis, I always thought that was odd. And before that, the other brother, the one during Arab's time, Andrew Gonzalez. Andrew, the same thing. I always thought that was an oxymoron. I guess we're going to have to end the show, Alan. If you were to put this in so many words, how would you summarize the show tonight?
Dynasties, political, social, economic, they are contrary to the public policy established under the Constitution. And according to the Civil Code, they are void from the beginning. And void, according to the Supreme Court, means 3 words: no legal existence. They never happened. While we may be in the minority talking about what is the true state of the rule of law, history will vindicate us.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've enjoyed the content of this program. It wasn't meant to make you stand up and dance, but I've come to the realization that's what we just did. Because now, you have heard it, the revelation is we have a right, and this is our country, and the law emanates from the people. That's us. We don't have to be subjugated by these dynasties, these black shadows and black images with big family names that have ruled this country for their self-interest. The problem is we just sit back and watch the show. So how I would summarize this is there needs, tama si Attorney Alan, there has to be a collective initiative to want to do what is right because it is legal and it is correct. And we have to keep nudging. So I guess tama ka again, to keep on punching. You go with the law, abide with the law, and keep going because the law will prevail. Thank you very much, Attorney Alan. You know, I got really tired with this 50-minute, I guess when you think of real deep thoughts and you start to make things become relevant to you, it is exhausting. Law is exhausting. To me.
To those who have been in the dark too long, it would be enlightening and refreshing.
Thank you very much, Attorney Alan. Maraming salamat po. Thank you very much. We hope you've enjoyed our show. Don't forget what we've talked about.
are what you watch.